Hi there, Richard Fulmer here, and welcome to another Richard's Rock Rambles. So what I thought we'd do for the next couple of videos, or for quite a few going forward, is have a look at the albums that have turned 50 in 2022. So there's quite a few 50th anniversaries, some notable albums, some iconic albums, and going all the way back to 1972. So we're going to kick off with my favorite band, and an album that came out in 1972 to be exact, released the 25th of September 1972 on the Vertigo label, that great Vertigo label, Black Sabbath's VOL.4. Obviously their fourth album, Volume 4. They kicked things off with their self-titled, then into Paranoid, which was a big seller for them, and Masters of Reality, which is a really doomy, heavy album which would sort of set the template going forward, which is the blueprint for stoner doom metal, if you like. But with this album, they were trying different things. They were trying to expand their sound a little, experimenting in the studio. You know, Tony Iommi was a great one for trying innovative ideas, and definitely that's the case with this album. Funnily enough, though, when they were doing this album, they were heavily into the drug scene, especially cocaine, which had quite a few references on this album. And a large part of the recording, none of the members can actually remember doing, which is quite strange, but it just shows you how hectic it was in those times. And yet they came up with, for me, a stunning album. It had there was a lot of melody in the music, not just the bludgeoning riffs. There was even some prog involved, you know, different time changes, different parts to the tracks. There was a ballad type song, which was not new. I mean, they had done something similar on Masters of Reality, but it became quite a hit. So let's have a look at the tracks on here. But before we get there, let's just recap. So it was recorded at the record plant in Los Angeles in May 1972. And as I said, released 25th of September on the Vertigo label. It was produced by Black Sabbath and Patrick Meehan, who was their manager. And later on in their career, there would be some issues with Patrick Meehan. They would have all sorts of court cases against him, and that would be sung about in the album Sabotage, but that was a lot further down the line. So this was the first album without a proper producer. It was basically the band with their manager. There is a 2021 Super Deluxe version, which is really cool, which I wouldn't mind getting one day. It's a 4-disc set, and with alternate takes, false starts, studio dialogue, you know, B-sides, what have you, all kinds of stuff that wasn't released before. And the 4th disc is a live recording, or live recordings, from 1973, which is, I think, really cool. Because Sabbath, for me, was at their peak around from about 72 to 75. So you'd get some really great live recordings. So obviously in the band at the time, you had Ozzy Osbourne on vocals, sometimes on harmonica, Tony Iommi guitar, piano, and mellotron. Mellotron was a very popular instrument of the day back in the early 70s. Bands like the Moody Blues, they used a lot of mellotron. Geezer Butler was on bass and mellotron, and Bill Ward on drums and percussion. And Bill Ward really shines on this album. There's a lot of intricate time changes, a lot of jazz-style drumming. Yeah, he would really come to the fore on this. And the album went platinum in Canada and the States and gold in the UK. So let's have a look at the tracks on here. Track number 1, Wheels of Confusion. I spoke about prog earlier, and that's what you get with this track. There's 3 different parts to it. Some amazing guitar work from Tony Iommi, great drumming from Bill Ward, as I mentioned, and the lyrics as well. Geezer Butler was the main lyricist in the band, and he would really shine on this album. Then you had Tomorrow's Dream with that crushing intro riff, a typical Sabbath track. Changes, that was the track which was a sort of a ballad, singing about lost love and what have you. For me, that's a track I skip mostly when I listen to this album. I think I've heard it enough times. It was many years later resurrected by Ozzy and his daughter Kelly. They did their own version of Changes, but it's okay for what it is. Then you had a sort of an instrumental thing called FX. And apparently in the studio, this was when Tony Iommi was a bit out of his tree on cocaine. And he had like one of those big crosses they used to wear, the crucifixes, and it was kept hitting the bass guitar and getting off a weird sound, and that's what they recorded, and that's what FX became. And then it goes into Supernaut, which is my favorite track on here, one of my favorite Sabbath tracks of all. And it's got a really heavy riff. And right towards the end, there's a bit of a drum break as well, where Bill Ward does his thing on the drums, and they go back into the riff. Excellent track. Snowblind, snow being the cocaine that was in huge mounds in the studio at the time. So that's a drug song. Also a big hit for them off this album. Cornucopia, Laguna Sunrise, which is a beautiful acoustic piece. Really interesting piece from Tony Iommi. St. Vitus Dance and Under the Sun are the last two tracks, which also really slow and heavy, typical Sabbath tracks. But if you listen to this album, you can see the production is a lot clearer. Funny, because they didn't have a proper producer, so the band obviously knew what they were doing. I think mostly Tony Iommi was at the helm of that. And just always, ever since I listened to this the first time, way back when I was a teenager, something about this album just grabbed me. And it hasn't got old. I can listen to this today, and it's as great for me now as it was back then. And in many polls, this comes out in the top 5 for Black Sabbath. So I just want to see if there's anything I can show you. This is a remastered version which came out, I think this was in the 90s at some stage. 1992, I think, on the Castle copyrights. That's the CD there, you can see. See if there's anything I can show you. Oh, you can see that. There's Ozzy in his high-heel boots with the rest of the guys. And that iconic cover would be Ozzy doing his peace sign. And there's the lyrics. Tells you all about the album. And this was in the inside sleeve of the original vinyl. So there you had Geezer Butler with his see-through bass. There's another shot. And there's old Ozzy. And that's a great live shot of the band on stage doing their thing. Early days, smallish crowds compared to what they would become, but still a great shot. And Bill Ward also didn't have a massive kit, but what he did, he used very well. And there's, speaking of which, there's Bill Ward, hair flying, and there's Tony Iommi with a red Gibson SG, one of the early Gibsons that he had. He later on would play just black ones, and he would have his own signature SG, which you can purchase at a price, obviously. And more tracks. Yeah, that's about it. As I say, there is that 4-disc deluxe version that came out last year. I've seen that on in unboxing here on YouTube. It looks amazing, so that would really be worth shelling out the money for. So there we go, my first look at an album that's 50 years old. It's hard to imagine it's 50 years. 1972, so I would have been 10. A little too young to appreciate it at the time, but a few years down the line, I certainly did. So next time around, we'll have a look at another album that's 50 years old. Take it easy, guys. Have a good week out there, and I'll catch you soon. Cheers.